Yo, what's up, everybody? What's up, Billy? How's it going? Thank you for joining us, episode 147. Yes, that's correct, 147. I always had to think about it. There's too many numbers these days.
Yeah, it's getting up there. Yeah, good to see you, Austin, as well. Hope everything's going well. Happy episode 147. We have a very special guest, a good pal of mine I've known for a long time, and I'm looking forward to getting into everything with his background and his skating. He's such like a huge influence, and definitely was around during like that super exploratory time in like the 2000s where like everyone was like trying to really see what was possible on blades. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that with him. But yeah, before anything, first and foremost, I want to do my quick little spiel. I'm going to make it very short today. If you don't, please follow us on all of our social media platforms. We have a Facebook, we have an Instagram, we have a YouTube. You can subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment, share. It's all very helpful. We have an iTunes. If you like what you're hearing, you can give us a 5-star rating, a review, and we also have a Patreon. You can be a Patreon for as little as $3 a month. You have exclusive access to content. We're doing trick tips. We do behind the scenes with our guests. Like we watch section reviews. You get to come on and ask our guests questions before anyone else does. And you are automatically entered to win something from our online drawing every month. We do a monthly drawing with our patrons. And if you win, you get something for free from our online store. So that is my spiel for today. It is short. It is sweet. And that's what I got.
I like the new condensed spiel.
You like
It's good.
it?
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. We'll throw it down there.
Cool.
Along the lines of that, let's give a shout out to our new Patreon supporters this week. We have Samuel Brownlee, Mr. Colin Kelso. We got TJ Edwards, Larinius Prankus, Robbie Brown, and Mike Olson. I hope I pronounced at least some of those names correct. Thank you all so much for supporting us. And we have a WTF this week, which I feel is appropriate considering our guest, if you're familiar with our guest skating. We have Rob Collette by Patreon supporter Chad Vigneault. I don't know if I pronounced that correct either, but oof. I thought this was super awesome, and it's definitely something that's right up Kenji's alley. So I wonder if he has a
Love
name for that. Yeah, it's like a 540 body roll kind of thing. It's so smooth, too. I kind of want to try this now, but I also kind of want to have some padding on my back before I try something like that.
Yeah, like the motion's like indistinguishable from like a 540, like a regular.
It's a perfect bow 540, and somehow he just
Yeah.
managed to slide his back on the ledge, too, at the same time. Super cool. I love that one. Shout out to Rob Collette. That was really cool. I enjoy that one a lot.
Okay. Before we get into our guest, I want to mention a couple quick things. One, so if you don't know, the MetroCard Classic is an event in New York City. It is the last weekend of August. We have a preview promotional edit coming out for it. I believe tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then Saturday, but probably tomorrow. But we've reached out to some sponsors already and people that are going to be sponsoring the event. But if you would like to be a sponsor for the event, if you want to get involved, at this moment, you can just DM us at MetroCard Classic on Instagram. So if you have an Instagram, we're going to do that. But after the edit drops tomorrow, there's going to be a link, an email, all that stuff. Or you could send an email to heavydistributionusa@gmail.com. So those are two ways you can get in touch if you want to be a sponsor for the event. It's a 2-day event. The first day is the BPSO 8 at Under the K Skate Park under the Kosciuszko Bridge in Brooklyn, New York.
Kosciuszko?
And the Kosciuszko Bridge in Brooklyn, New York.
Is that it? Is that accurate?
That's how you say it. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Everybody says it differently.
Well, I'll tell you a story in a second. And then the next day, Sunday, is the return of the NYC Street Invite. It's going to be different than the ones of the past. It's going to be, but it's going to be very cool. So that's the 2-day. Book your tickets, book your Airbnb if you haven't already. We're about 2 months out. We're just under 2 months out. So it should still be a good time for tickets and everything like that. But yeah, quickly about the Kosciuszko Bridge. When they were blowing up, they made you remember the old bridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to call it the Kosciuszko Bridge, but then they had like a whole thing on the news about how to say it when they were taking it down. I guess I can't think of it, but I want to say Albanian immigrant, maybe Armenian, something I can't. But they were saying on the news how to say it. It's Kosciuszko. Yeah. So for
Kosciuszko,
anyone who's
Kosciuszko.
interested.
Yeah, I remember trying to look up
that.
on the news too. I remember somebody posted a clip, I think on Instagram I saw, of different news reporters all pronouncing it differently too. It might have been around that time too because it was recently, but it's funny because anybody who's outside of New York knows that everybody doesn't know that everyone in New York pronounces that bridge differently because it's such a crazy name to pronounce for us Americans. So it makes sense that it's something else.
A lot of consonants.
Yeah, that's a lot of letters in that. A lot of letters in there. But yeah, I'm hyped for the Metro Car Classic. It's gonna be a fun time. A lot going on that weekend in New York. I'm super excited for it. And was there anything else, Billy, that you wanted to say about that, or no?
Yeah. Quickly, this is a kind of a disclaimer for our last episode, the last Channel 11. I saw there was some criticism about some people not being on the list. Look, anytime you make a list like this, you're gonna you're gonna forget some people. After the episode, I was shocked. I forgot Frankie. I was like, oh, I forgot Frankie. How did I forget Frankie? Aragon, we honorable mention, but a lot of people thought it should be on the list. You know, it's always gonna be tough to do, but we make mistakes. We're not perfect, and it's subjective at the end of the day. So, I just wanted to clear that up. We did forget some people. I was like, how did I forget Frankie? But
well, we had a disclaimer too when we started the show. It's insanely hard. We picked 10 or 12 each. It's insanely hard to number it down to such a small amount of people when there's so many great people in this industry out of the 30 something years that skating has been around. So we did have a disclaimer, and maybe we'll do a second one where we could talk more in depth about these other people who other people did feel that deserve, or maybe we'll just open it up to you guys. Who do you guys feel is opened up for Hall of Fame? We'll do an episode on just your picks instead, so that you guys can only complain to yourselves.
That could go.
We'll do something like that. But yeah, are we ready for our guests?
Yes.
What's everyone feeling like? All right, cool. Everybody, please, without further ado, welcome our very special guest for this episode, Kenji Yi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you for coming on the show. This is awesome.
Well, I saw you at Blade Cup. Remember?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. It was brief, but yeah, I remember that. That was good.
I don't forget our interactions, Bill. That was good to see you. And
good to see you too.
Thanks for having me on. This is an honor, and I've been dreaming about it for 10 years, but too scared to ask or even, you know what I mean? Not ready. But I want to be here right now with you guys. So, thank you.
We're gonna have a lot of fun right now. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for coming on, and really excited to have you on the episode, and great to see you coming back strong to skating after having such a strong history and everything that you've contributed in the past. You've been such a strong presence in skating, and especially in the creative front and showing what's possible on blades. I want to talk about a lot of things regarding your approach to skating. I want to talk about your influences and all of that stuff, but having you be new on the show, or first time being on the show, I'd like to hear a little bit about your history. A lot of people know you're from Minnesota. There's a strong hockey scene there. A lot of people transition skating from hockey to aggressive. So I wonder what your introduction to rollerblading was.
Yeah, so I grew up. I went to high school in Minnesota, but I was living in Kansas before that, and it was in Kansas around, I don't know, I was probably 7 years old or 8, and my dad bought scissors and I rollerblades. And hold on one second, I can't see you guys right now.
Yeah, I think you just see what all the guests see as well.
Oh, okay.
We're still here. Don't worry.
Okay, I'd like to see you guys. I'd rather not look at mine.
Okay, we'll get all of us in here then. We'll join you for this.
Thank you. So yeah, when I was super young, rollerblading was booming, and my dad just got us all skates, and I took to it. I liked it more than biking. Biking always kind of hurt my back, and I would do heel toe, double heel, double toe, jump off a ramp. There were some BMX guys that had a ramp down the street, and I just kind of was I don't like biking, so I'm gonna try it on these. But at that point, I had no idea what aggressive rollerblading was. Then around 7th grade, into 7th grade, we moved to Minnesota, and at that point, I was still a really hardcore soccer player, and I remember at that time I was kind of starting to get burned out on soccer, and I just was feeling like robotic. Like I can do this on auto, but I'm not really here. Um, and I have a memory of during some practice, like looking across the way, and there were some skateboarders at some basketball court, and it just caught me, and I was like, I'd rather be over there, you know? And then my new, so when we moved into our new place in Minnesota, there just happened to be some skateboarders down the street who had built a really nice mini ramp. I saw that, and I also saw the X Games on TV, and I was like, I put two and two together, and I was like, I think I want to do that. So my
So
dad
this
took
was
me,
like the 90s or
this is 97, 97, 98.
97? Okay.
Yeah. And so my dad took me to the sporting goods store, and I got Rossi Streets. And I went straight to the ramp with my dad. I didn't know anyone else who did it. With my dad and my sister, and tried to drop in.
Damn,
And
off
I
the
felt,
bat.
yeah, I fell straight to my tailbone, and I couldn't skate. I couldn't, it was bad. I think it was a couple weeks. And if you're that young and you're that hurt, it was a bad fall. I didn't know what I was doing. And then, but I still liked it, you know? So when I felt better, I realized that there was a guy that was like just down the street, halfway between me and the mini ramp. I think his name was Elliot, but I'm not sure. And he had a play rail, and he knew how to drop in. So he took me under his wing, and he taught me how to drop in and kind of tried to teach me how to grind. But at that point, I was just doing like frontside and backside stalls, and that was it. And then I started school. I was going to Orono High School, which is like 45 minutes west of Minneapolis. So I'm out there, you know. And I start school, and there's other rollerbladers at school, you know, and I'm trying to make friends. And so I'm like, hey guys, like I have access to a mini ramp because I had already talked to the owner. The skateboarders had gone to college and just left it, and they gave me the kind of the key. Like if you go with me, then you're okay. Nobody else can go, but if you're with me, so then I started bringing some of the guys to the mini ramp. There was one guy named Ben Tierney who could do like top acid, and he was the best. And he would do like the tray, you know, the traits thing. Like he would skate like that, and but
Yeah.
you know, he kind of pushed me to like get beyond front sides and backside stalls. And then my dad helped build me some wonky ramps that didn't work right away, too steep, and we got it down, and then built me a little rail, and I put it in the grass, and I started practicing, and then I pretty much became obsessed. And then the funny thing about my entrance into skating is that it took me a few years before I saw a skate video. Like I saw it on TV, and I was a park rat, so I'd go to the skate parks. And at one point, I'm probably like, freshman in high school, and I'm definitely getting better, but I don't know what the culture is. And Four Down, I started going to this place called Four Down. And I remember my first time walking in there, the ramps looked massive. They were like 8 feet, which at this point out here in Minnesota, everything's so tiny, I'd probably still feel the same way. But I see Ben Weiss, rest in peace. And he was the first skater that I saw that was clearly a professional, even though I didn't know what that meant. And then I met, the Frenches. I met Jake LaCroix, Jake Moreau. I met Chris Farmer. I met Marcus Todd. I mean, the names go on. Everybody was at Four Down. And everybody was killing it. Baby Jesus, John Larson, unreal. Mike Silva, unreal. And I was in a good place to learn, So I still didn't skate street. I didn't know what was going on, but eventually I saw my first. I've been skating for a long time, but my first video I actually saw was VG10. So that was kind of my entry. Total park rat. I remember the first time I went. I didn't know what street skating was. I just would look at I remember seeing Blake O'Brien's tiny little Solomons, and they were shredded. And I'm like, how do your skates look like this? He's skating street, and I'm only skating like coping. And then I remember a guy named Derek Larson, and we were like, we're going to try to go street skating. So we skate from, my mom and dad would just drop me off at Four Down for like open to close. And that's what I look forward to every weekend. And during the week, I would just practice on my whatever we had built every day. But then Derek and I were like, we want to try street. So we go out from Four Down and we find a tap rail. And I don't even think I tried to slow it. I don't think I got it. But that was my first time I tried street skating, and I stuck with, I liked park still. And then Four Down closed. And that was like, what the fuck? This is my whole life.
Right.
Everything to me. But I had developed a little crew of friends. And it was Chris Farmer, me, a guy named Greg Morovskis, and Cantry Gans. And they were kind of like, they lived in like not too far from me, west of Minneapolis. So when Four Down closed, there was no choice. There wasn't a, I was going to start street skating. So, there was actually a point there. It's crazy thinking back, but I told my parents, I'm going to start street skating, drop me off downtown, and they said, no, like that's illegal. It's dangerous. I bawled and was like, said the most awful things to them. And they realized that either I'm walking or I'm street skating, and they said, well, I'm pretty stubborn. So that's how, so then I just started skating, and like, early days, like that was my little crew. And, skating with Chris at that time, it was unreal because, like I would go to his house and we would go like, we weren't driving yet. So we would go to the rails that he had around his house. He happened to have a couple bad rails, scary rails by his house. And I would go there with him and he would be doing stuff like switch true top acid. And I'm like, okay, if Chris can switch true top acid, then I have to try to soul it. I just got to try, And I also remember reflecting on like, nobody even knew who he was at that time, really. And I'm like, and that defined a lot of my early days. Like, I loved the community and the friends. And I never dreamed of, fast forward 39 years old now, on a podcast with here, At that time, I just loved the friendship and I loved skating. And any desire to become a name in it or dreams of that, when you start with Chris, you just kind of, you get what I'm saying?
It's a high benchmark.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, as time went on, like, let's see, I got a license, and I'm a year older than everybody in the Chris and those guys, So I started picking them up and we'd start skating downtown and going all over, and you know how it goes. You start filming and getting better and developing, and before I knew it, I was kind of surrounded by a bigger crew, and we called ourselves SNF. And there was another crew called LDR, and we were kind of feuding. You know what I mean?
What did that stand for? What were the?
So LDR was like liquor, drugs, rock and roll.
Okay.
And that was Ben Weiss, Jake Moreau, the Frenches, Shane McClay, and they were only like a year older than me, and my crew was mostly a year younger than me, somewhat. And so we're almost the same age, but we were pretty much sober blade nerds. And they were, going into like a partying lifestyle, and they were crazy, So it was a different approach.
So what did yours stand for? SNR?
SNF?
SNF meant skate and fight, which sounds tough, but we weren't that tough. Skate and fight comes from Fargo and Moorhead, Minnesota. So Kai Carlson-Wee, Anders Carlson-Wee, Billy and Nick Brendan, and a couple other guys there, they started this skate and fight thing, and that was just their crew. And when they all moved down, by the time I was like I'd skate with them for a little bit in high school. I knew we all knew them, but then they moved down to the Twin Cities, the Brendans and the Carlston Wees, and they brought SNF, and we joined it. And if you go back, it'd be fun to watch this. But remember, Battle My Crew, like SNF, we had sections in Battle My Crew, and we had Zach Flugum, who was filming us and making those sections, and he filmed a video called Beyond that we all had sections in. Matt Jorgensen, Nick Brendan, me, Blake O'Brien, and that was that that was the first like real video, even though he did get it, he did make copies, but I don't know how far, I don't know how far out it went. But yeah, so there I am. I'm in high school, and I yeah, and I'm learning how to hang with the guys, and skate and getting better, and it was a it was a good time. That during high school though, uh, when I moved to Minnesota, right? Um, I was like heartbroken because I had a good group of friends in Kansas, and then when I got to my new school, um, I was just the new guy, and some shit went down that was a misunderstanding, and suddenly I was getting bullied by everybody, and I was so sensitive because like say that would have happened in Kansas, I would have had people that I trusted, that friends that like I can take a joke, but I was just broken up, and the bullying wouldn't stop, and I shut down. And then in every arena of my life, church, school, my home life, I was basically I was completely shut down. Like my parents said to me, "What is going on?" They didn't know, and I wouldn't talk about it because I couldn't, I didn't know how. And skating was the only refuge for me. It was the only space in which I felt happy, and the thing is that like I'm grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it. I don't know what would have happened to me otherwise. But then I yeah, I mean, it's like kind of the story you kind of get these, you think about like, oh, but then that happened 20 years later. But so skating was my refuge. And for that reason too, I wasn't about like becoming a big skater because I just needed I needed friends, you know? And it's funny because I asked Nick Brendan at one point, so did you know that when I was in high school, all this was going on? And he said no. He had no idea, you know? And there was a couple flare-ups here and there, but yeah, nobody knew. So, yeah.
Do you mind if I ask, like, what was it that had happened that caused this situation?
Well, so basically, this is embarrassing, but I guess it's ancient history. So I got to my new school, and there was a girl who liked me, and they they said like, this girl likes you. You should date her. I'm like, okay. And I was a slow developer, so I didn't really know what that meant, you know. And I saw that uh, her other friends would like hang on her backpack, like cute stuff. And I'm like, okay, well if I'm the boyfriend, maybe that's what I should do. So I try that, like kind of a hug from behind, you could say. And then one day there was in a pep rally, someone comes out to me and they whisper, "Brit's breaking up with you." I didn't mean to say their name, but they're breaking up with you. And I'm like, why? And they said, "Oh, you're moving too fast." And then I'm like, what do you mean? Like I'd never kissed her. I had never spent any time with her outside of school. And then I walk out of the pep rally, and suddenly I'm surrounded by haters, and they're chanting "Pete, Pete, 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 Shooter McGavin," this kind of shit. And then they were saying I was a pussy patter. I must have accidentally not hugged her right. Didn't know. And then after that, it was a sexual shaming. And uh, by the end of eighth grade, I was still trying to fit in and find my people, but I was like, I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm like, whatever, this sucks. So
Yeah, that sucks.
I went to the eighth grade like end of the year party, and they put on a video, a home video, with two guys reenacting the thing that happened between me and the girl, and everyone bursts out laughing. And at that point, I remember thinking in my mind, the truth doesn't matter to these people. It doesn't matter. So I kind of shut down, called my mom. I remember one of the guys who made the video came up to me, "Hey man, it's so great. I thought you were going to be all pissed when we made this, but you're so chill." The reality is I was completely shut down. And I called my mom, "Come get me. I got to get out of here." And then on my walk out, I remember there was a guy who started talking shit, and he wanted to fight me. And I remember he had a broken collarbone at the time, and he's still talking shit. Now, when and I hit a growth spurt late, like I was tiny, like 5 feet tall, you know, I hadn't hit puberty. I was just little, but I still was like, I thought, I can't fight you. Your shoulders hurt. So I walked around him, and after that, I was like, fuck these people forever, you know? And I had a couple people that I would joke around with in high school over the years, but I pretty much just through class and waited to go skate, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, and then,
So
and then yeah, but the bullying didn't stop, and then it became racist. And I didn't even know until like maybe like 5, 8 years ago, looking back, oh, they're calling me names that are actually racist, and I'm surrounded by all white people. There is nobody but a couple Asians maybe. And so yeah, looking back on that, I was like, shit, that sucks. But I wouldn't have thrown myself that hard into skating if that wasn't happening. And that's one thing I've been thinking about, is that like a lot of people who go really far in anything, they get to that world level, sometimes there's trauma, that makes you over focus, So yeah.
No, that's true. That's a really good point. I think like a lot of people who are involved in and have gone pretty far in skating and other capacities, like tend to have like taken that pain and that energy and put it into one thing and used it as a refuge, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
Right.
being able to put your focus into like one thing makes you like not have to like think about the other things. So skating could be like, or whatever kind of physical activity can be a good thing in that way.
Yeah, but it's a Band-Aid, and eventually you're going to spill out. And one thing that I learned through, a decade now of therapy, one of the first things that came up is that my only access that I understood to love and connection was becoming excellent at something. You're good at soccer, so you deserve love. You're good at skating, so you deserve. And that was the way I thought. And then, it took me years to realize, and I'm still unlearning it, that may be a type of love, but it's not lasting. It's not real. It only just, it's like a drug. And to be honest, it's my favorite fucking drug, but it's not, it's not the answer. So. Yeah.
I know, and I think I know what you mean. Like, I think a lot of skaters who have gone far, who have experienced like breaks from skating or even injuries, like, if I could relate it on some very basic level, I'm sure it's like different. But I remember like when I got hit by the car and I was out of skating for like over a year, just like the year before, I was like so busy and like, you're interacting with a lot of your friends and things like that. And then after I was hurt, it was like quiet, dark, like it wasn't there because, and like you say, like you feel like you're achieving that level of skating kind of brings like you some value to yourself. And And then yeah, like, you know, it also could be like the crux of a lot of relationships in skating. But I know what you mean. Like when it's doesn't necessarily mean that that's always there, but you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's
interesting stuff. Wow.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, it is. I was just say it's very relatable, and I appreciate you coming, like opening up about all this stuff too, because I'm sure almost everybody can relate to this in one way or another. And when we're
Yeah,
younger, when we start skating, and like you're talking about like middle school and high school and stuff, like you don't recognize this stuff because we're not mature enough to realize how it's going to
yeah,
affect us in the long run. And now
yeah,
that a lot of us are older, we're in our 30s or some 40s, even late
hmm
20s, it's like mature enough
yeah,
to realize that what happened as a child is affecting you
yeah,
now, and what skating is to all of us, which is
yeah,
hopefully something positive. And at
yeah,
least if we're gonna look at the positive, it keeps our friendships together, like
yeah,
long
yeah,
lasting friendships too. Than most other people, we have friends for like decades compared to other
yeah,
people that we know who don't have skating. So
yeah.
it's really good to have this stuff, and it's really good to speak openly about
Mhm.
this stuff too, because I think everyone can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, I've like it's I'm sure that you guys can, in your own, close skate worlds, like it's just been one after the another. When skating isn't an option anymore for whatever reason, maybe you lose your passion, maybe you get hurt, maybe you realize that you have to develop a career. It's really hard for a lot of us, and it has been for me, to live without skating, and a lot of people, you know, what do you turn to get that high, And sometimes it's not healthy stuff, Or like I know one of my fears is always that I'm gonna end up like one of those dudes at the stereotypical thing. I'm at the bar and I'm talking about the old days when I was playing football, that kind of shit.
Al
I
Bundy.
don't want I don't want to be that, but I've been afraid that that's what could happen. Um, but yeah, yeah, and mental illness and trauma and a lot and addiction. I mean, it seems to it seems to be something that's not that uncommon in our community, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's just
it's
not as
true.
uncommon in general in life, but now that we're all
Yeah.
surrounded by each other and have a community of some sort, we're seeing it more
Yeah.
and more than if
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
didn't have any community and we just like,
Yeah.
whatever, went to work, came home to our
Yeah.
families, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, those kinds of issues come up a little later, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was go ahead, Billy.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say when you were talking about like your beginning in skating and everything, there was so many different parts of that
Yeah.
that stood out to me. And one thing
Yeah.
was when you mentioned Chris Farmer, like you grew up skating with
Yeah.
Chris, and everyone knows Chris is like one of the biggest, best skaters who's ever done it. And his skating is similar to your skating, and I know it wasn't always like that. I'm not sure about your super early skating, but I know we had Chris on the show before, and he
Nice.
cited that his skating changed because of Dustin Latimer. Like when he
Mm.
started skating with Dustin,
Yeah.
like the mind game days, his skating, like
Yeah.
something changed in his brain, the way he thought about skating, approaching tricks, approaching any kind of obstacle, looking at everything differently. I'm like,
Yeah.
your skating is like so unique and so different than everyone else's. Did you have influences like how Chris did that kind of changed your skating from like a park rat kind of style to doing thinking
Yeah.
way outside of the box way before most other
Yeah.
people were doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. So for me, I also love Dustin Latimer skating like everybody. But when I watched him skate, I knew that that was not achievable for me. I don't relate. For me, it was John Julio from day one to now. And I think the reason why is because I think part of it was because I wanted an Asian role model. I was drawn to that. But also, like, the way he moved, like the wall ride to top soul, the fish brains, like the, soul to wall ride. Like, I was like, I think that one day I can move like that. So I took him as my guiding light, you know. But you know, beyond that, I mean, for influences, it would definitely be Anders and Kai Carlson we as well. Um, those guys are brilliant. You know, I remember when I watched their Holden Village section, the one where they're in the woods.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Uh, I saw that, And I was deeply in that perspective at the time, right? Like I was like, they are doing the best stuff. I want to hang out. I was close with their family. I kind of wanted to be adopted by them. They're amazing, like amazing family. They're all brilliant. So when they dropped that section and I watched it, I thought this is the best thing that anyone's ever done on skates. I
Yeah.
mean, and so that was huge for me. I think the influences, the other influences come later on down the road, and that would be Pat Lennon and Sean Cullen. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but they were more
I think
like mentors, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I remember seeing Kai Carlson Wee's that part in the woods and just being like, especially like being like a kid from New York. I remember like
Yeah.
seeing that and being like, wow, these guys like
Yeah.
are out in the middle of the woods like skating, making anything happen. And it was kind of like a lot of stuff back in the day was like, oh, the spot, and it's still like that these days. But they just like kind of went and like made spots out of whatever was there, and like were
Yeah.
very like. I think they kind of took it further than anyone was kind of taking it, or what was acceptable at that time in terms of like not even using their wheels, like running around, standing on
Yeah.
stuff in the woods. So
Yeah.
I, I,
Yeah.
I can actually
Yeah.
see that, like how that had an impact
Yeah.
on your skating, like
Hmm.
from your
Yeah.
non-traditional
Yeah.
approach.
Mm.
But
And yeah, go ahead.
no, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, our little crew, like we valued creativity and we valued like, you know, thinking hard about, you know, trying to be innovative. And there's no doubt that the Mind Game movies were part of that huge movement, you know, and for me. But directly, I think it was just like, you know, those guys, uh, and me, you know, and I was following them for sure, you know. Thing about Kai and Anders is they're not only creative. Those guys were true fishing rails, true soy Alling rails. They were
Right.
amazing. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, it's cool to see like someone who has that like prowess in one area kind of take
mm,
the risk to go far out in like the areas where they were experimenting and see
yeah,
some of it work. And it's just cool to have the courage to experiment in that way. And
yeah,
what was like a culture that had like very distinct lines and boundaries of what was acceptable and what wasn't.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I kind of wanted to touch, and you mentioned it yourself. I think it would be good to segue to talk about like the Pat Lennon, Sean Cullen influence,
yeah,
and years later, like being able to work with Sean like pretty closely on some projects and
yeah,
like be like really deeply involved in it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Sean Cullen was known for like making like very not traditional videos. In my perspective, I think he has like one of the most artistic approaches to like skate videos,
yeah,
very off the
yeah,
beaten path. And,
yeah,
but I think some eccentricity comes with his personality in that. And some people have like their own opinions, and opinions range
yeah, yeah,
regarding Sean Cullen. So,
yeah.
if you care to get into like that experience, what that was like meeting Sean and working with Sean, what that was like.
Yeah. So, I'd love to, but can I start with Pat? Because that's how I met.
Absolutely.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, this takes us to, uh, so just to keep the kind of, so after I graduated high school in 2002, I moved to San Diego. And I moved there and I lived with, the first year I lived with Matt Jorgensen and Kai Carlson Wee. And that was our, the California dream, right? There was a bunch of Minnesota guys out there. The Brendans went too, a couple others. And I, after the first year and a half or two, everybody split, went back to Minnesota. And I was just there. And that was when I got into school. And I wasn't a good student in high school. Like I told you, I was sleeping and just trying to not be there. But it turned out that I really liked the humanities and I really liked philosophy. So I was drifting away from skating big time. Um, and going into like, I want to learn. Like I want to learn like, I think when I got into skating in high school, I grew up Christian and I told myself I'm going to put that on hold. I don't really care about that. But then by the time I was like, 18, 19 in San Diego and kind of the homies had dipped and I was like, I was drawn to, learning and questioning. And my philosophy professor told me that I should transfer to a big school. And I started to excel in school. And so I transferred to UC Berkeley, which is like a crazy thing because it's a really, really prestigious school. And luckily, the community college transfer system in California is really great. It gives you a chance if you fuck off like your entire high school, whatever. So I move up to go to UC Berkeley. I do 2 years and finish with a degree in philosophy. But like by my junior year, and I'm still in school, I had a breakup, which really fucked me up. And I started skating again because I'm like, I need to sweat. I need to like get it out. And I met a couple people like Ricardo Moran, my friend Dave, Jimmy. These were all, there was a Berkeley skate crew, which is pretty funny. John Lee and Dave Tran are now doctors. It's so sick. And we were a little crew of smart ass Berkeley kids who liked to skate. And so we would just go to the Berkeley skate park. And at that point, I'm not skating street. I'm not filming. Not really. I think we might have made some fun edits and stuff. But like, I was just doing it to feel good. And I also fell in love with bowl skating. So I was having a good time. And then one day, somebody comes in the skate park. He's got a skateboard, black hoodie. Comes up to me to introduce himself. I don't know who they are. I'm just ripping. It's my local, you know? And I realize it's like, hey, my name is Pat Lennon. I'm like, what? Cool. Like, great to meet you, man. I'm a huge fan. Like, totally gushing, you know? And he said, hey, man, like, you're good at this. You know, you're good at skating. Why don't you come? This was kind of when Pat was still trying to make another video. Like, maybe, you know? And he was kind of drifting away from it, but he was still he still had his toe in, at least maybe a foot in. But
Yeah.
he invited me to come. I was living in Berkeley, and he invited me to come and skate street in San Francisco with him. And we spent months doing that. And I would get on the BART, and I would go to the 29th Street house, which I later moved in, and we would go around. And we didn't really connect as people. I think he just thought I was a nerd, and Sean thought I was a nerd, and you know, in that world, I kind of was.
Yeah.
You know, what is this guy into? You know, and so, but Pat told me at one point, I'll never forget this. Like, he was telling me like some trick I should do, you know, and I was like, I can't do that. And he's like, yeah, you can. He's like, you don't even know how good you are. You have no fucking idea. And I was like, coming out of college, studied a lot of great philosophers who were kind of telling me, find a passion, throw yourself into it, and become great. And so I had that idea in my head, which I didn't have as a kid, right? And I'm like, okay, what can I do? Maybe it's this. Maybe I need to see what I can. And I was curious too. And I respected Pat. I'm like, this guy is the real deal. We know that. You know, to this day, whenever I show people skating sections, I have to show one of his.
Yeah.
And yeah, the 4x4 one. We know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So like he took me under his wing, like mentored me, and then we were filming for his video. And I was having the time of my life, you know, because I didn't even think I was like, at that point, you know how when you're like 24 and you think you're washed up and old? You know what I mean? It's like, I thought, you know, because and my body wasn't conditioned for it because I had been leaning over a desk studying, you know, but I started to wake up. And then I meet Sean through Pat, and they have their own stuff, you know, but Sean was like, oh, this guy's kind of good, huh? Why don't you come skate with me? So then I split time between filming with Sean and filming with Pat, and they weren't really tight then. A lot of history. You probably know more about than me, Bill. But basically, Sean did the same thing that Pat did. He believed in me, and he would just tell me what to do, you know, coach. And they had different approaches, but all in all, and they were both crazy as hell. But like I'm drawn to people like that because we'll probably get to it. I am too, you know? And being neurodivergent is something that I didn't know. But when I look back on it, why wasn't I skating with the regular degulars? It's because it made sense. There's some connection there, you know? And I don't have much of a relationship with either of them at this point, but I'll always I'll always be grateful, you know? Because if it wasn't for Pat in particular, it would have just been VG23 and done, you know?
Hmm.
So, yeah. And the thing about Sean, I'll say what you might, but, and I bet you know this, Billy, if you're willing to hold space for the guy, magic will happen. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like you are so annoyed. You are losing your mind because this guy, he's just he's pushing, he's always on something and you're following him around. You're like, why am I even doing this? But then there's a moment, you know, there's like a golden hour mystical moment. I'm filming this guy try this trick that I think is pretty weak for like fucking 2 hours. And then he does it. And I'm like, wow, you know? So it was hard to
Definitely.
work. It was hard to work with Sean. It really was. And, you know, um, but I'm glad that I did, you know, because you're right. He is a true artist and so is Pat,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah.
Definitely.
That was a good
That's cool,
description of
man.
Sean Cullen. I just wanted to say that out there. That was like one of the best descriptions of Sean Cullen I ever heard from anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the way that I move in the world, and I've just developed this over the years, it makes sense and it works for me, is if you don't like the guy, and you can tell me, you could say anything pretty much, there's limits, but you could say, oh, he stole somebody's camera or he did this or he did that, but he never fucked me over, you know. For RIPSF, I put the money down to duplicate. He paid me back, you know. So at the end of the day, you know, that's just how I roll. I mean, I have a connection with him, and I'm sorry that if you don't like him, that's okay, you know. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna fight over it, but you know,
Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely there's no shortage of stories when it comes
yeah,
to Sean Cullen and spending time with him.
yeah, yeah. And I wish him well, you know, and I'd love to see him again. I would, but I'm not. I don't want to get stuck with him though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned VG23, and you're part of like the elite who had a part in a video group video. For anybody who's knows anything about skating back in history, having a
Yeah,
section and being featured in Video Groove was
yeah,
like
yeah,
that. Like you were like a god at that point, and you had a section in VG23.
yeah.
Like, do you care to talk about that? Like,
I just want to
how
talk.
did that happen? How
Yeah,
did Dave
yeah,
come
yeah,
to
yeah.
you? Like, what did that feel like? What did that do for your skating career? Like, all of that.
No, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know if people know this, maybe, maybe not, but so I told you I moved down to San Diego in 2002, living with Kai and Matt, and we had a company that we had started and we were making clothes and hats and stuff. Originally, the name of the company, I think Kai named it, was Shadow. And then Shane Coburn contacted Kai and said, "Look, I got this a project that I want to use this name." So Kai was like, okay, I'll call it something else. Um, and we called it Savin. And so that was our little company, and we were filming for the Savin team video, all stuff filmed in San Diego. And I had filmed like, there was a lot of footage. I think I filmed like 15 minutes of footage, you know. There's a leftover section that someone was hitting me up about, like VG23 leftovers from me, and I don't know where it is. But anyway, so I'm sitting on all this footage, right? Kai, Nick, everybody dipped, like I told you. The video never came into fruition, but Zach Flugum, I had the footage. I just gave it to Zach Flugum, and he was living in LA at the time. And the footage when it came out, it was a little old, you know. Like I think it was like over a year, old. And I had, back then, like it wasn't a thing to post it online. you know. So it was just sitting, and then Zach uh, made the section and sent it to Dave Payne, and we put it in. So there wasn't a single trick in that whole section that I knew was going to be in a VG. I had no idea, you know. So I did slide in last minute. That was like the last VG, right? 23.
Yeah.
Alligator
Yeah.
Sword. Yeah.
You made the
That's how
cut.
that, just barely.
You slid in there. That's a crazy
Yeah.
story. I don't know. I wonder if like other people who have had sections of Video Groove were similar to that, like not specifically filming for a video group, but had ton of sick footage. It's kind of like Ben Schwab with
Yeah.
his accidental machine section. I think he started filming originally, and he just showed the footage to Shane. Shane was like, "This is incredible. We have to put it in the video."
Wow.
And like, you don't expect to film for such a prestigious video like that. And then next thing you know,
Yeah.
you got a section in Video Groove, you got a section in Mind Game, like without even kind of knowing it. And so it came out like you weren't specifically you didn't film one trick for Video Groove, by the way. That was all leftovers.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible. And
Yeah.
did that do anything for like?
If I knew I was filming for VG, I don't know. Like,
I was
mean,
gonna
it was like
say,
outside the box. Like, I might have been more nervous. Like, let me keep it tighter.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, knowing you were filming for a video group, would anything have been different? You think?
Maybe. I think I mean, first off, like, I don't think that would have ever happened. I don't think I was on the radar like that, you know. And it just, yeah. But that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if it would have been different. Maybe. Yeah. I'm glad it went the way it did, kind of, because like if I had that in my head, maybe I would have broke myself off or something. I don't know. You know.
That was the motto back then. Just send it, like, just get hyped and fuck it and huck it,
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, I was hucking it too in my own way, but yeah.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
Did that having a section in Video Group change anything for you afterwards? Like, in any way,
Yeah.
were you skating?
No. By the time VG23 came out, I was already on that philosophy mission. I was already more interested in table tennis than rollerblading.
Oh wow.
It was cool.
Nice.
It was an honor, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot how I felt about it. I do remember recording. You know how there's a little audio at the beginning of my VG23 section, me talking.
Yeah.
And I say something like, in order to understand I said, in order to understand all things, understand one thing. And for me, this one thing has been skating, and I've dedicated all my life to it. You know, it was something like that. And I remember recording that at Grossmont Community College. Shout out Santee crew. Those guys accepted us, you know. It was tight. But that's like over in their neck of the woods, you know. I remember recording that audio message for Zach. He wanted me to say something for the beginning of the video. I remember that. But it was an afterthought. I was, you know. And like I said, at that point, I didn't have dreams. I didn't have dreams of becoming a professional rollerblader or even being sponsored, really. I mean, I would like to ask myself back then, but I don't think that was on my agenda. And by the time VG23 came out, you know, like I said, I was kind of moving on, and it's not in the skating in VG23 wasn't exactly fully accepted. So it's not like people were hitting me up like, "Yo, you want to ride for me? You want to go skate with me?" So people, you know, it came out, and then I went on with my life. You know, no one ever reached out to me. I wish they would have, but no one ever said, "Hey, we like what you did in that," because everybody saw it. It's VG. Yeah. Just, you know, it dropped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so. Yeah.
So I guess after UCB is when you kind of got that drive for the first time initially to kind of chase.
And I wanted to see, I was at a point in my life where, I mean, I've been struggling with mental illness my whole life since before I knew I had it. And I think that I was looking for an answer, and I wanted to prove myself, you know, and that's when I started really fucking pushing it. And the thing is that I've always been creative, but I was fresh out of UC Berkeley philosophy department. So I was working with some of the most brilliant minds in the world on philosophy. So then my already creative mindset was charged by that, you know? So I went to work. I immediately knew, oh, I'm glad I'm bringing this up because I made notes to try to like keep it together. And I didn't think of this, but now I remember that I knew what at some point the vision was dim at first, what kind of skater I could be, but it started getting clearer. And by the time I was skating with like Sean and Pat for a bit, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, and I couldn't stop until I had done it. And I built up, and I got to the point where, in my mind, my work on the shock video, when I was making it, I'm like, this is my magnum opus. This is it. This is my best I can do. You know, and so I was building up to that, and I kind of had a growing idea of like, what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to introduce, and what mattered to me. And it was exhilarating.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
It's so interesting hearing that story because as a someone who studied philosophy at UC Berkeley, then relating that to skating is like a unique take on it. And I want to point out something you just said right there. You're like, this is the best of my skating right now. This is like my best. And I was thinking about this recently because we all filmed sections before in the past, and we've all like it comes together, and you're like, this is like my best skating. Like, I'm so proud to show this to people, whatever. But is it really ever your best skating? Like, we're always trying to get better. It's an art form, right?
That question.
Yeah, it's like an art form, right? So like when you think about it, when you have a section, you're like, this is my best. Like, can you say that anymore? Because you don't really aspire for that to be your best. You still want to get better. Unless you plan on retiring tomorrow, but I doubt that's the case.
Yeah, I'm 39 and I am not done. And
Exactly.
here's the thing. Like, I love that question because in my mind back then, I thought this is my best work. But then, I mean, even as soon as after that the shock video was done, I was still releasing more sections. And I mean, I guess I kind of agree with you, and I'm critical of the idea of a peak, like, where did you hit your peak? Where were you, like, and then you descend,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the thing is that skating, at the end of the day, what does it mean? What does it mean to be my best work? Well, during the shock video might be some of my gnarliest shit, and my stuff before I left SF maybe some of my gnarliest stuff, but where was my heart? And so I almost think now, like, what is your best skating? I think my best skating is ahead of me still, because I think that I've never really skated from a fully, not fully, but a self-aware and place of love, So maybe my best section comes out in my 40s, and it's not the craziest, But then we'll talk it again. See, it's like I have to unlearn it. It's, yeah.
It's a lot to think about because
you got me thinking.
Exactly. It's a lot to think about because I thought about it before, but I never like actually discussed it with anybody. And it's interesting to have that discussion because it's like you might have had a section in the past that was like your gnarliest skating, your craziest skating. You went the biggest. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. There's a lot of refinements that need to be done, which I know personally.
Yes.
I know personally with my skating, I'm not doing 540 tricks onto handrails anymore or jumping huge gaps.
Yes, you are.
But
did a fake 540 top sole on a ledge rail in Hawaii or something.
That was a few years ago though. But like there's a lot of refinements that need to be done in between those spaces, and that's like what I know I'm personally working on now. I know a lot of other people are working on that too. It's easier on the body. It's like kind of taking something you know already and just making it that much better. And I feel like that is my best skating.
Yeah. Right. So the thing that comes up that I wanted to say is that when I watch my old sections now, I see that, the concepts are good, but sometimes the execution is a little rough because I barely pulled that off, The landing, I threw my back down. I didn't really squat because I just barely did it, And during that era, especially the shock era, obsessed with throwing myself into black holes that I had no business being in because I thought no one's done it yet. I'm not even the best person to do it, but no one's noticed it, you know? So I found myself like trying to do wall rides down sets with spins that I hadn't seen people do, but I didn't really have much business doing that. It's not like I could even five the set very well. You know what I mean? And so it's going to come off a little rough. And so, yeah, I mean, I look back and I know damn well my head was all up my ass when I was putting that out. But I look at it now and I say, that could use some refinement. And in these days, to further your point, one of the things, well, I just had a knee surgery, my third on my left knee. But right before that, I was starting to feel like I was skating in a way better than I ever have. And the reason why is because I was starting to like my mechanics were improving. I was starting to understand like this is a point I really want to make. So in my 30s, my skating was I had left SF and I was kind of like skating locally and filming. I was still filming sections every couple years. When I get really depressed, I would think, okay, I want to die, but if I go out skating, someone's like, yeah, I want to film. I'll get a little boost, Um, and that's why I kept getting hurt because I didn't have a consistent skate practice, and I wasn't physically training for it. But then fast forward to like I said last year, I fell back in love with skating fully, and I finally committed to if there's any way I would like to skate forever, you know? And I really committed and I fell in love and I start in any way. So I met a shaman who uh, watched my skating, right? And they said, you're skating in your 20 something year old body. You're not skating in your man body. And I was always kind of fighting, like, how can I lose the weight? How can I fight the dad bod? But then I started to realize, and then they said, like, they weren't sure how to tell me how to fix it, but that was their vision, that I was like working with the old body in my head, but I have a different body now. So then I did one thing. I most in my 20s and stuff, I liked to skate with my feet very close together and my right foot in front of the left and kind of swerve, you know, and carve like that. And I was still trying to skate like that, right? But I'm not 165 pounds. Now I'm 180, 190, 200, got a different body. So then I'm like, what if I spread my legs out instead of skating like this? Sorry, I can't see. I'm like bad at stuff.
It's reversed. Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of going like this, I was like spread them, you know? And then I started to take impact better. And then I started to realize that this is the way to skate with this body. And so the way that the shaman told me is that you used to skate in a cat body, but now you have a lion body. You have to work with that. And it was amazing because what happened is that so I skate with Jeff Howard all the time. He's one of my best friends. So imagine skating with Jeff, right? The dude can skate a rail, right? And I just started like opening myself up to whatever today. Like I started to think, let go of the preconceptions of what you want to do when you go to the skate park. Just show up and be open and see what feels good. And I started to find out that like there was a whole hidden trick vocabulary that I hadn't developed. And it was amazing. Like if you would have asked me up until last year, will you ever do a fast slide? Like, if you look at my skating, I'm not a frame skater. I'm all soul. Will you ever be able to do that? I said, no. Been watching Farmer do it. I've been watching the Carlson Lee brothers do it. Watching people do it. But then I learned it. I did backside fast slide, which to me is a lot easier than front side, but I'll get front side. And I'm like, it's because I'm actually connecting with my body, without a preconceived notion of what kind of skater I need to be, you know? And honestly, I'm more excited than ever to just learn new tricks, to develop these things. Now, my life dream, one of them, is to learn to torque. Still not there.
But you got
Maybe
fast
someday.
slides instead of, but
Yeah,
not torques.
yeah, I could do a back fast slide, but I can't torque for shit.
What? That doesn't
Like,
make any sense to me.
I don't know. You guys, yeah, I don't know. I'm looking. Hopefully,. I'll figure it out. You know, but it's just it's and what is good skating? What is it? And maybe it's all about values. Like maybe we're changing our values as like the kind of skating that I was doing back then to prove myself. Sure, it's good in some ways. It's impressive, but there was a time when I went home for Christmas to visit my family, and this is right around the time where I had my mental breakdown. And I told my parents and family straight up that I'm ready to die for this. Full stop. Is that good skating? It doesn't seem
Probably
like it.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
in what way? You just think that's like an immature way to think about it?
I've been thinking about it, and I think that, like, well, for one, the reason why I even thought I might die is because I was doing tricks that to show off that I had no business trying because I didn't build up carefully to them, you know? So, um, I don't know. I think we're all figuring it out. I think that the impulse to huck yourself is still there. But I'm trying to find a more sustainable practice, build up slowly, and be more careful. And at the end of the day, like, we all know that if we keep doing this, we're going to keep getting hurt. But, you know, maybe a good skating practice is what I want, like a martial art, that's good, you know? So build our bodies, to keep going.
What's the skating equivalent to that then? Besides the hucking yourself, like a martial arts version of practice, like practicing skating more than
Yeah.
sending it.
Yeah, I think, I don't have a background in martial arts. I think Billy does, but like, I think it's just about having not focusing so much on the trick or the section or the proving yourself, but thinking about it as a part of your life that you train for, and that every aspect of your life needs to be in tune with it. And instead of, if it's tricky because we do take risks. There's always the chance that we could die, full stop. But I think that I'm trying to work out ways to increase the likelihood of me being able to take a hike in my 50s and 60s,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
while so admitting that these risks are still worth it to me.
Definitely. I think probably what if I could like I think what he means also, Austin, is like a martial art just being like a discipline. You know what I mean? Anything
Yeah.
that's a discipline, that's a practice that you can do on
Yeah.
a regular basis, like acquires skills, a better understanding, and
Yeah.
that could be rollerblading, surfing,
Yeah.
it could be
Yeah.
table tennis. You could be
Yeah.
a black belt in table tennis. But yeah, so like I think that's
Yeah.
the idea. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still figuring it out, and if anybody has advice, I'm all ears, because uh, I'm not skating this year because of my knee surgery, but you know, next year, hopefully, I'll start getting back into it, and I know that I'm already training now. Like I know that I have to build my body up to be strong enough to keep going and be safe. You know?
yeah, definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna ask probably to those who have a history of your skating, probably one of the more obvious questions, but it was something we discussed beforehand and kind of wanted to get into it. But on a lot of your previous sections, uh, your name was Kevin Yi, and
Yeah.
now you go under Kenji Yi. So,
Mm,
what caused that transition, and what is that
yeah.
about?
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's confusing, but so what happened is that yeah, my birth name is Kevin, uh, and so when uh, I was in my late 20s, um, I had uh, my first full blown manic episode. Um, during that uh, manic episode, I walked into a Japanese uh, convenience store, and I've always felt like a longing, to connect with my uh, Chinese and Japanese heritage from my dad's side. And I was just crazy. And I went in there pretending to do martial arts, which I've literally been doing my whole life. I should just enroll into a class. Uh, so I'm doing that, and then the lady in the store says, like, I'm like, give me a Japanese name. And she said, I'm going to call you Kenji because you're funny and smart, I think. And I walked out of that uh, store, went to the skate park, and I was Kenji now. Uh, but, uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, to get into this whole story, that was how I got that name. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, how
I,
you? Okay,
I have to shout out this one comment in the chat right now because this I'm dying from right here. Shawn Michelson said Shane came to him and said he was starting a company named Kevin, so you had to change your name to Kenji. Shout out to Shawn Michelson. That was just I was dying with that with the shadow reference from earlier.
That's creative.
I
But yeah, I mean,
I thought that was pretty funny.
yeah, but like, I can talk about the bipolar I want to. That's partly why I'm here. But basically, so what went down? There had been signs that there was something up with me for a while, but my mania never became full blown. Um, and during this time in SF, it was the moment where I was, finishing up filming for the Shadow video, and I had just um, what was that? I had just gone to the Blade Cup and done well. Um, I went and it was like I went into the AM contest, and then I made it to the finals of the AM contest and got second, and then I went into the pro comp, and I don't know what I got, but I went a few rounds, maybe seventh or something. It was insane. Like, I had never felt so accepted and appreciated by the rollerblading community in my life, because like there was several moments where I think my JSF fam and my SF people were chanting my last name, Yee, Yee, Yee. And it was the most crazy thing ever. And I was just like, I was able to black it all out. Like, I was just skating like how I would with my friends, but on that stage. So everything in my skating life and career seemed to be going great, but I was unraveling. And, my dad came out to visit me in SF. I had just gotten a really good apartment, which is not easy. And I waited a year just to get the opportunity to ask, basically. So things were doing okay. My dad comes out, I think okay. And a week later, uh, I went full blown manic. And when I say that, I know that not everybody's like, when I say bipolar, when I say mania, uh, what I mean is I was exhibiting a lot of the symptoms that would be associated with bipolar, like risky behavior, um, super confidence, to the point of like literally thinking, I think I'm a demigod, you know? And then kind of skipping work. So the whole time I was in SF, like pretty much, other than a little stint at D Structure, I was working for um, an engineering firm, and I was doing data entry, like an administrative position. And I stuck with it because I knew that I needed to have a way to make money and have great insurance. And my Berkeley degree got me in the door. I have no experience in engineering, but somehow that was just my fate, and it worked for a while, for 6 years. Um, but eventually, I got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. You know, like I hated it, um, and it just hurt my soul a little bit every day to go sit in front of a computer and type. It's not for me. It's not for everybody. And so when I was getting manic, I remember I walked into work, right, with a tie tied around my neck, tight, like not done right, like it's gonna choke me out. And I had a skateboard because I was so severely paranoid that I thought the cops were after me. And in my state of total delusion, I thought that if I had to hide, and if I get a skateboard and pretend to be a skateboarder, no one will know it's me. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Yeah, because you blade. And the cops know that.
The cops know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
they
like, oh, it's not him. That's not him. He blades.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, and at that
I'm
point,
kidding.
so I walk into work with the skateboard, and I'm holding the skateboard, and I feel the weight, I feel the trucks, and at that point, I was not I was a danger to myself and anyone around me, and I went in there to quit. Fuck this, I'm done. And then my boss Dee Dee knew what was happening, and took me into a conference room and said, what you have to do is this, like, you have to not quit. You have to ask for medical leave, because then when you need to go get help, the engineering firm will be forced to pay for it. And if it wasn't for her, then yeah, that would have been worse. So I do that. And at that point, I'm just wandering around town like a crazy person. I would, so I didn't even need skates to skate at that point. I would just run through the mission and like jump on wall ride every tree and just like sprint. I was wild. And like when I did have skates on, I was like, I think I can do anything, and like, but I was just completely unraveling. There's like an interview or something with Bryan Kranz where it's like a picture of me with my toenails painted and like a sword. I was fucking manic, and I didn't know. But eventually it got so bad that my old friend Tia, I went to her house, and she knew something was up. And I had changed my name on Facebook, and she had already diagnosed me as bipolar. Like, she's not a doctor, but she had told me a couple years before that I think you need to think about this, because I was having like mini episodes, but then I would just get back to being normal. And so then she contacts my dad, and my dad came to SF, and he just was like, you're coming with me, you have to. And I listened. So I got on a plane and flew to Sarasota, Florida, where they had retired. My friends took care of all my shit. They cleaned out my apartment and put stuff in storage. And when we land the plane, my dad's like, well, let's go to the hospital and get you checked out, So I go to the hospital, and I'm laying down on a bed, and they're, talking to me, and I'm feeling super paranoid, I get out of the bed, and I try to escape, right? And I'm like, this doesn't feel right, And then there's these two big nurses who stopped me. And the next moment I woke up, I was in a cop car, and then I'm dumped into a mental hospital. And I was stuck there for 2 or 3 weeks, which literally felt like, that time for me is like it is another life. Like, uh, but my parents would visit me every day, and I was not all right. And so with bipolar, there's bipolar 1 and 2. 2 is kind of like when you get hypomanic, that's like elevated energy. It's the same as mania, but it doesn't go that far. Like, it's like the difference between having a bigger ego and thinking you're a demigod, you know? So when I was full blown manic, I I'm there. I'm just doing art every day, and I don't make any sense to my family. Like when I'm talking, like it's like, when you talk to someone who's not there, like I was living in a different reality. And so after a couple weeks or so, I got out and went to go live with my family, my mom and dad, um, and I had to see a therapist like twice a week or something, and I was super medicated, obviously. They put me on who knows how many drugs, right, to try to bring me down, bring me back to reality. And even then, I had to fight so hard to just become sane again. And my dad, without him, I don't know if I would have come back. But then, so I wanted to go back to SF still, right? Um, and I did, actually. It's a part of my story that I sort of blank out. But after I left, I went back for and I couldn't find a place to live. So I moved into this, it was in North Oakland, and it was one of those big communal living spaces where it's kind of like there's a bunch of weird acrobats and artists and hippies and just
Yeah.
weirdo life.
Eccentric. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just the only thing I could find. And I got a room in a bigger apartment, in a bigger building with a couple of roommates I didn't know, because that's all I could find. I went back to my job at the engineering firm because I still had it on hold, but I had to go back because I was going to lose the job. And my whole goal was to get back to SF, and so I moved in this place, and I try to get it back together, and I couldn't, you know and after a month or whatever, I realized I had to. I went back to Florida, um, and then for about a year I floated back and forth between Florida and Minnesota, living with my parents and trying to get it back together, And at that point, I had I felt like I had to leave. I felt like I had to leave the skating world. Um, I was ashamed because this stuff's all hidden now. But at that time, when I was in Florida and I just got out of the mental hospital, I made some videos with myself with face paint on and just being manic, being kind of crazy. And I thought that it was, this is brilliant, But by that point, I was trying to get back into skating still. And I reached out to Shadow and asked them to send me some skates. And whatever happened, I feel like Roller Warehouse might have hooked me up, Bay Area love. But at that point, Shadow was like, go find a shop sponsor. And I was like, damn. So everything I did, doesn't mean anything. And it wasn't really my fault,
Crazy. That's wild.
Yeah. And for years, I would have I just felt, hurt. And if there's any defense to it, I mean, I think when I was full blown manic, I was posting on Facebook "fuck Shadow, I'm going to Valo, follow Julio," because deep in my psyche, growing up, him being my favorite skater of all time, I think I was like, "Fuck it,"
Right.
Unfortunately, Valo didn't work for me,
Hmm.
So anyways, like I guess they could have said that like, but to me, I just hope that in the future, if other like skaters, if this happens, just to hold space a little bit more.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. That seems like a really tough journey to have to endure everything and like
Yeah,
a lot of pressure and stress. So thank you for
yeah,
sharing that. Because I'm sure there are other people out there dealing with these kind of things and having these experiences, especially with bipolar and like everything else going on in the world. But you seem much better now. How did you go from being in this place of such a manic state to kind of coming back down, like getting your feet back,
yeah.
uh, you know, everything together?
It's been a long road, and it doesn't end. So, I guess I'll just say and tell you like what what happened next. So I eventually I decided to settle in Minnesota because I had to be around family. My sister lives here, my older sister, and my parents live here part time, and it was either Sarasota or Minneapolis. And even though like the weather seemed better down there, I made two friends, two new friends who weren't skaters, just people. Uh, I had those two friends, Douglas and Annie, and I felt like that's all I had. So I stayed in Minneapolis. I settled there, and what happened is that I needed to find a career. I knew that I didn't want to be working in administrative data entry stuff. That was not it for me. So I was like, okay, I have no idea what to do. You know, like, um, at that point, my dreams that over time of being a professional skater, of being put pro for Shadow, clearly that was over. You know, so and it was also kind of unrealistic. I'm actually grateful that it didn't happen sometimes because then I think I would be maybe 3 years behind the progress that I am at now on building a life for myself, because we all know like Shadow died, XSJADO died, there was no future. Um, so, and they were never going to choose me. Um, and that's a whole other story about why I think why and what happened, but who knows? It just wasn't going to happen. And we all know, like, Bill, you are, boom, but still, you know, we've been working, we have to build our own lives. So I didn't know what to do, and I like couldn't get a job. Like I really couldn't. I was trying. At first I'm like, I want to go into the arts or I want to go into writing. Uh, and, but I had no experience and didn't know anybody. So I eventually was like, okay, I have to do a temp agency just to find work, right? And I did some weird stuff. Like I worked at a place that sold guns and rifles and ammunition. They didn't hire me, and so the temp, and I worked at random stuff. But one temp job I had, I was doing drink services for a hotel out here, and they asked me, setting up conference rooms with croissants and coffee and shit like that. And then one day they like, we need a dishwasher, you know, and I was like, okay, whatever. So I did a shift on Dish for the hotel, and I felt like I my see at that time I was living in like so after you have a manic episode most often, and what happens to me for sure is the worst the is if the level of shittiness that if you go fully manic for me, what happens after is I go into a state of like brain fog and complete despair. And that's kind of where I was at, and I couldn't be present. I couldn't, my mental faculties were not available to me. So but when I was on the dish pit and I'm in the kitchen, I'm like, what's going on, right? I know where the dishes go. Like I something's working here, you know And then I looked across the way and I saw someone flick some food in a saute pan, and I thought it was beautiful, you know, like physically. And so then I went home. They couldn't hire me to cook because they'd have to buy me from the temp agency, right? And I did work as a cook a couple times, high school, college. I never considered it a potential career ever. Never thought of it. I'm just, I'm in college. I'm, flipping burgers or whatever I was doing. But then I'm like at this point where it's like it doesn't matter. Uh, it, I was kind of rock bottom, so it's like it doesn't matter if I think that I want to be a cook or not. This is all I can do right now. So why not try? So then I asked my sister, like I told her, I'm like, hey, I think I want to be a cook. And she got me a job through a friend at her church, to work in an American restaurant in the suburbs. And I started as a dishwasher. And when I started that job, that was right after my first knee surgery, ACL reconstruction. So I remember slipping around in the water, worried the whole time I would fucking break my knee again.
Shit.
But soon enough, and this whole process was honestly humbling, uh, from where I came and to where I went, and I eventually the chef, when he brought me on, he's like, you got to do your time on dish. That's just the way it is. Then he brought me on to prep, and then he brought me onto the line a little bit. So I'm actually cooking now, and it was working for me, and then almost like I think maybe a year passed, like barely any time, a year and a half maybe. A year passed, and I had jumped to working at the best fine dining restaurant in Minneapolis. It's called La Bellevue, no longer exists. But it was like when that place closed, they're like, this is the last bastion of fine dining. But my first chef, Eli, here's another thing. So at that point, I was so depressed. I'm like, I'm not Kenji. I went back to Kevin because I'm like, Kenji has confidence. Kenji, blah, blah, blah. And if you're bipolar, the tendency is to be like, when you get that depressed, it's like, hey, I'd take a bump. You know what I mean? I'll be a little crazy if I can feel better, So I, so I was going by Kevin, and I started doing visual art because that's always been like a side thing for me, And and I thought, okay, I'll try to be a visual artist. And I started to have some shows, and I called my art brand Kenji Art. Just take it from that, But I was going by Kevin, and I go into this is that first cooking job. Sorry, I'm backtracking. I go into that first cooking job, first day, right? And everyone's like, "What's your name? Is it Kenji or is it Kevin?" So I had told my chef that I was doing Kenji Art, and he put me on the schedule as Kenji instead of Kevin. So there was confusion because I was introducing myself as Kevin, but the schedule said Kenji. And I remember a moment where people were like, "So what do you want us to call you?" And I just said, "Fuck it, call me Kenji." I like the name better, and so that's how it stuck. And then now to go back, so within like a year or whatever, like the thing about it is that I've always been a very creative person, and although I didn't have a lot of experience cooking, it didn't even take a year for me to get specials on menus. And then suddenly I'm at the best French restaurant in town, and I'm dreaming about cooking, and there's this like passion that's growing, for something new. And it didn't feel like as much as skating, but it was something, And I at times it did though. I felt like you know, I started to dream of becoming a chef. And within a year and a half, I found myself as like, this is like a year and a half, under 2 years, we'll say. I'm not good with time, but under 2 years of my actual cooking career started, I'm suddenly the head chef, like executive chef of a ramen restaurant. And I'm like, damn, this must be it for me, But I also reflected at that point and I said to myself, one of my regrets in skating is not fully mastering the fundamentals before I tried to be creative. So I said, okay, let's not make that mistake again. So I quit the head chef job because I couldn't handle. I didn't know how to teach people. I didn't know how to manage. I had no experience in that role, and people didn't respect me, and it was a struggle. So I quit and said, I'm going to go work for a restaurant as a line cook and work my way up the stations and try to get a solid foundation. Um, and then I did that for years. Um, and I've been living eventually, like pretty soon after I settled in Minnesota, I left my parents' house and moved to Loring Park, which is like the reason why I moved there is because so Loring Park's always been a special place for me to skate. I felt at home there, even though I was from the burbs. I spent a lot of time in the city, and that was my favorite place. You know, uh, Now I actually live above it, so I look down. I I don't I filmed a whole section called Greenway last year, a little section of me skating in my little backyard, and it's the sickest stuff. It's so fun to skate, and it's still there. And so, anyways, but I moved to Loring Park, and that's where I've been for the last, you know, 9 years. And through the restaurant industry, I met people. I started going out. I, I made a lot of friends, and I started partying and kind of becoming a cool guy, you know, and dating and just living, and it was fun. And this whole time I'm still developing as a chef, and moving to different restaurants and learning, and basically and I was still skating. And sometimes I get a little defensive if somebody like slides in and says like, I'm glad you're skating again. And I'm kind of like, well, thank you, but I never stopped. You know, I go in and out, but there's several sections that I filmed in Minnesota. I was just doing it locally and when I felt like it, and you know, and I was okay with that. I was really okay with just hiding. I didn't want to be in that spotlight, because I resented the skate industry, and I thought that everybody didn't care about me, And then fast forward to last year's Blade Cup. I went out there with the intention of opening my heart to love if it's there, you know? And I thought I'd like burn bridges and shit, but it turns out that like it's not even foggy on the bridge. It's open arms. And I competed, and that morning I went to the setup, and I was skating, and I was like feeling it and not missing tricks, not too much. I remember Oki. We're kind of old friends from the Shock days. I met him in Las Vegas, and he looks at me. He's like, Kevin Yee's out here, and I just was like, yeah, I can still do this. And then when the comp started, right? Um, so nervous. And the first run, I missed everything. The second run, I landed like a couple tricks. But to me, there was a moment there in the second run where I smiled, and that was my victory. You know. So, yeah.
It's all for how that's a perfect example of how skating makes you feel. I appreciate, like Billy said, opening up to everything that you just did, the whole path of where you were, how you are now. I know people in the chat right now are saying nothing but things in support about this. A lot of people seem to be going through similar things as well. So your story is helping everybody out here, and to hear how you came out of it now, you found a career out of it, and a newfound love for skating out of it. It seems like you're in a really good place now. So it's awesome to hear that.
Yeah, I mean it's been hard, but I've had community, friends, family out here that therapists who have you know held me down, and I think I'm doing better now. Um, And but it's still, if you're so when I first like came to Loring Park and I'm cooking and shit and I'm just like out drinking all the time and there was a while where I was drinking like 4 or 5 like Jamesons on the rocks a night, and I'm not like a heavy drink, like I can't take it, like I can't keep up, like that's too much for me. I would just take it to the limit to right before I puke, and I knew that. And I never had manic episodes for a few years. And I thought it was over. I thought, okay, maybe it was just a crazy moment in my life, and I don't know. I'm depressed, but I'm managing, and I'm kind of okay. But then when I started to get more sober and like at different periods and start to thrive and work out again and get like back in shape, and then suddenly I was starting to get manic again, and it's happened again and again and again. And I see a therapist. I had a therapy session immediately before this, which was good because this is hard for me to be here, but I want to be here and tell my story, and you know I do think I'm doing better, and but every day is a struggle, you know. Um, yeah, so yeah,
Well,
it's all love and support over here on this side of things.
definitely.
cool.
Definitely, man. And again, like, thank you for opening up to this level. I know it's not like easy to expose like such a vulnerable side of yourself to
Yeah,
everyone, but very much
yeah,
appreciate it. And I'm sure
yeah,
there are people out there. I know for sure there are people out there who will hear this and be able to relate. And I think that's really important.
yeah. I mean, and one of my closest friends out here, Jeff Howard, came on your podcast and talked about it too. It's
Right.
like I think that the being honest is important, so that other people can not feel so alone, you know? Uh, and yeah, I mean, if anyone is like in my community, like if anyone comes to me and is having a manic episode, I have a lot of some bipolar friends, and including Jeff, and, we support each other, you know? So
Definitely.
yeah, it's a gift and a curse. I don't know what to say about it. I can't separate it from who I am, and I don't think I would, you know. I don't think I'd be the person that I am if I didn't have this. And it's just so weird, though. Sometimes it makes me think like this isn't even real. Like, how can it? But then it's like another. Then I start to feel the hypomania ramping up, and I'm like, eventually I just had to own it. It's something I have to deal with forever. But but I also, it's like I said, like a lot of psychiatrists and therapist perspective and older bipolar folks some of them will say like, this is a problem you can solve, get over it, take the right drugs, and it's over. But I resist that because I believe that this capacity to move into like a space that of thinking and imagining and spiritual dimension, uh, it's not just sickness, it's not just bad. Like it helps me, and it's helped me my whole life. But if it's not managed properly, then I lose everything. And the shitty thing is that every time that things start to go well for me and I start to feel happy, that's when nowadays when that happens, my spider sense is on, and I know that there's a chance that it's all gonna fall apart. You know what I mean? So it's weird. It's weird as hell. Like, I mean, when I look back into when I was a kid, I was just kind of like I like playing soccer, hanging out. I didn't see this coming. But is it from my brain or from like, you know, repressing the trauma from when I was a kid? I don't know, but it's real. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, man, I just gotta say thank you for making yourself vulnerable and sharing it. And like, I know a lot of people are dealing with these kind of things and all different kinds of things,
Yeah.
struggles,
Yeah.
and especially in the current world we're living in. A lot of stress, a lot of access, internet, all these new things that can really test
Yeah.
the your
Yeah.
mental health.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely
Well,
good to come
yeah.
out here and share like a lot of this stuff. And again, I got to say thank you because
Definitely.
it's deep stuff, and I know it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, that's why it took me 10 years to come on here. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned it on live, but for all of, I'm 39 now. For the last at least 9 or 10 years, ever since I dipped and, kind of like hid from the skating world, like I kept a toe in, but that's it. And I've never stopped watching skating. I'm a complete skate nerd. Like, I love it. I've never stopped watching what everyone's doing and appreciating it. But yeah, I have lost my train of thought, Bill. I don't know where I was going. But what'd you say before that? I was going to say something, but
No,
yeah.
about just like thanks for making yourself vulnerable, and you were just saying about the
Oh, right,
skating.
right, right. Thing. No, I used to walk around and in my head, like not really trying to. It would be like you guys on a podcast with me, and I would imagine what I would say because I think part of me knew eventually I had to tell my story, but I was never ready. Like I just couldn't do it. And then when I was at the Blade Cup with after party, into the after party, it's like raining, right? And you were there, Bill, and you said, "Hey, why don't you come on the podcast sometime?" Or something like, "Yeah, you should come on," just casually. And I was like, I didn't know what to say, you know, kind of like, ugh. And then, you know, yesterday I it, I felt a shift. I've been feeling a shift in me in the last 10 days. And I reached out to Bill and was like, "Hey, man, like if you ask me, I want you to know the answer is yes. I think I have something to say, but no weird feelings. If it's not." And then literally an hour later, yesterday, you were like, "Can you go on it tomorrow?" And I was like, yeah.
I'm glad
So
you came on, though. This is awesome
yeah,
having you on, and I think this
yeah, thank
should live up to your expectations. This is a really good talk, really good discussion, and people in the chat
yeah,
are loving this right now. So there's
yeah,
a lot of support on both
yeah. But
sides.
if we have more time, let's talk about skating.
Well, we
Yeah,
got
I think we got
Uh,
we're almost 2 hours in,
oh
which is
my God, time flew.
pretty normal for us.
Okay.
But I think we're gonna take some questions from our live audience if that's okay, and if you don't
Okay.
mind, maybe if you
Yeah.
have like 10 to 15 minutes afterwards, we can watch some of your sections that you have on the internet and watch that for our Patreon subscribers.
Okay. I'm happy to do it. I'm excited.
Cool.
Hell yeah. Let's do
Okay.
this. Let's do this then. So if you're watching us live right now, drop us a question if you have any questions for Kenji. We're going to go through the Patreon questions first. We have 3 here from Patreon. The first one is from Matt Benerick. He says, "Hey Kenji, I remember you talking on the How to Be Unpopular cast with Joey and Todd around the time of the shock video, which
Oh,
was a great section, by the way. Just curious how your approach or views on skating might have changed since then. Hope all is well."
mm. Okay. So for the record, all my old interviews, for the most part, and the podcasts that I did with the mushroom blading guys, I find it to be cringe for me. Because I think my at that time I had a chip on my shoulder and I thought that I deserved more than what I was getting, and my ego was too much, man. You know, so I don't look back on those things. I don't like it. Um, but in terms of my like relationship with skating, like method, I'd love to talk about method because I was thinking about that. Like, so now this is advice like that I kind of taught myself. Um, so I look at what's what's kind of easy for me as a skater. What comes real natural. Not that I'm necessarily insanely good at it, But what were the things I asked myself that I'm a little above average? And like Machios, wall rides, John Julio shit. So I took those things and I said, how good can I get at a Machio? Like, how fucked of a Machio can I do? How can I leap from Machio to Machio? You know? And so I super focused on my strengths, and that kind of developed like the picture of skating that you've seen. Um, and reflecting on that now, um, well, one thing I realized is that doing that method, if you get so fucking good at a Machio, sorry, there's my ego. I don't mean it, but honestly, I got that trick, and I shout out to Machio in Japan for couldn't have done it without you. But, but like, I realized that wait, right now I can't do a true fish brain. But if I get so good at Machio, maybe I can understand it. And so kind of doors can open by super focusing on your strengths. And I think that's one of my methods that I've tried. And I think it's worked okay for me. And then the other thing is I think that now my method is more of a zooming in and zooming out. So moving forward, I think that like one a method is to like, okay, I'm really feeling natural and good at this. So like zoom in, see how far you can take like the cross leg roll. I'm loving everything everyone's doing in skating right now. Skating culture to me right now, rollerblading is better than it's ever been. It's healthier, it's safer. There's more love, there's more acceptance. And that's partly why I don't want to be done because I feel like I should have been in this era, but beyond that, like now I'm thinking zoom in on one thing, zoom out, and then zoom in, and then zoom out as a practice to kind of flow through progression. Now, this advice does not apply to goats. you know, if you can fucking do whatever you want to do, then do it. They don't. I'm talking about like you know what I mean. So that's a method. That's what I'm thinking about right now, and it changes, but yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know.
That's a good one.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your insight on that. Second
Yeah.
question from Patreon from Michael Garlinghouse, who asks, "What lessons and practices have you taken from skating and applied it to your life as a chef? Also, share with the listeners what the sushi project is." Well, you
Okay,
kind of
so
spoke about your relationship with skating and your career now with like learning the fundamentals before
yeah,
like
yeah,
mastering everything.
yeah, yeah. So how does I think that like that thing I said back in BG23 that if you know one thing, then you know all things through that one. I don't agree with it fully anymore. But I do. I said I use skating metaphor for life, and I think that when I need to think about something like with cooking, like directions to go, like you said, if I put it in skating language, then I have, I don't know how long I've been skating, man, like since 97. I don't really do numbers, but like that's a lot of experience. And so if I can translate, it doesn't always work, but if I can translate something into skating language, then I think that I can understand it a little better. And in terms of sushi project, so it's not it's called the Shui project, which is kind of like an American way of saying water in Chinese, Shui, like feng shui. So, anyways, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was feeling like the restaurant industry sucks. You know, what's my future here? I didn't feel like I wanted to run a restaurant or open one because who am I to think it's not just going to close in a few years like all of them do? It's really hard. And so I thought I want to do something outside the box, and be a chef outside the box. And so I started the Shui project 4 or 5 years ago, and it's grown into something beautiful. Um, so what I did is I did a couple. I had a couple of friends who were farmers, and they wanted like urban farmers, and I had just started the Shui project, and I thought it was going to be kind of like catering and private dinners. And then I, but I did these little pop-ups, and then uh, you know, I was driving home from one, and I had like all this extra food, and I was like, okay, it was always been on Instagram, and I posted on my story like I had an idea. I was like, what if I invite people over for a donation based meal in my apartment, and I turned my apartment into like a cafe, and I posted it, and people came, and then I did another and another and another, and so I started blowing up, and before I knew it, it was wall to wall in my apartment, and
Damn.
people, and I was planning these events like, so I would make a menu, and I would sometimes have a theme like love or humor, and if I had like comedy, I made like a menu on bad chef jokes, like don't do that. That's a fusion that you probably shouldn't touch, shit like that. Or like this is then I made a menu based on love, and like the person I was dating at the time liked this dish, so I explored it, and then I made things that like my mom and dad would love, and then I had like a local like love therapist come and speak, and I had comedians and DJs, and it was like awesome,
That sounds
and
awesome.
then yeah, and then what happened is the pandemic started, and so I couldn't like have people in my apartment anymore. So I was stuck. I'm like, what the fuck to do? And I was making enough money doing this, like just barely, but making enough to like not work anything else. So I'm kind of so then when pandemic started, I know it's getting long, so I'll try to cut it. But so when pandemic started, I was like, there's these essential workers, they're out there. I don't have to be out there, and they're at risk, right? None of us knew, like, what if you touch a box? Like, do you get it off contact? Like, it's risky, right? So how do I do food service? How do I continue to support my community that I've created and keep my job, keep going? So I said, okay, what I'm going to do, and I only figure out all this stuff because I have a whole team of people that help me. So what we came up with is that I'll do custom food for essential workers. And so the essential workers would hit me up, and I say, what are your dietary restrictions, And then we'd pick a time, and I'd cook it in my apartment, and I'd hand it to them, And that went for a while, and I'd write like sweet things on the bags and try to, do what I can. And then George Floyd was murdered. And like, I'm in Minneapolis. Suddenly, Minneapolis is like the center of the world, right? Like, I was there, We saw everything burning, you know? And so then I said, okay, I need to shift. Like, how can I help? So I started a project called Konbini. All this is under the Shui project. And Konbini is like like the thing that I did, the moment where, no, we're not doing peaks, not in cooking and not in skating, right? But that was a good moment for me, because I was able to so what I did is I opened up my window. There was a little grass between and I was garden level at that time. So I opened up my window, put a sandwich board outside, and said, come and get food if you're a person of color, or if you are fighting out there and protesting. And there's a lot of places to be inside, a revolution, and I felt like the place that I should be was in the kitchen, feeding. So people would come and sit out the window, and I'd have a new menu every day, and I would give it on a donation basis. And I had 5 mini fridges in my apartment just to make it work, And at that point, I was struggling with my knee. I was like dragging my leg around because I was working too much, and we haven't gotten all the surgeries, but at that point I needed another one. I didn't really know it. I knew it, but anyway, so then my apartment catches wind, and the city of Minneapolis just catches wind, and they shut me down completely, because it's illegal to do what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
but to go back to like how you learn from a skater, fuck it, You know,
Mhm.
I'll do it anyway. So then after that, I started to do pop-ups out of restaurants still during COVID. So it was actually the health code, was okay. And then I keep going and, it's still evolving and I'm still, I'm excited to keep, Shui project going, So that's, yeah, if you're in, I still do pop-ups and I did a couple recently and, yeah,
That's
Very
awesome.
cool.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
cool.
That's awesome. Look at Kenji giving back to the
really
community.
cool.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, it's the community that brought me in and loved me. Uh, they taught me. I try to do good, but it's if you understood it, you would know. It's just been a blessing.
Hmm.
You know, yeah,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm sure they're all appreciative of you as well for that.
yeah, yeah.
Um, we have one more question from Patreon before we get into our live chat. We'll take a couple of the live chat as well. But last one from
Okay.
Patreon from Tree Rudolph, who asked, can you recall what led to the doing the rocket sidewalk thingy down the rail in VG23?
Rocket
You
sidewalk.
did like on your shins, or like
Oh
one of your
yeah,
shins. I think that was
the body slam
VG23.
stuff.
Yeah, I guess so. It was like
Okay.
one shin and like the other foot was like hanging over.
Was it when I jumped on the bench, like kind of 360, like a 270 backslide
I
on the
think it was a
leg?
down rail. No, wasn't it a down rail if I
Oh,
remember? Like
the down rail.
shot from the front, and you do
Yeah,
like
yeah.
shin and
Oh
have
yeah,
the other
yeah,
one. I think that's what he's
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
What was the question about it?
What led to that, or the concept
Oh,
for that, or anything?
yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's easy. I was a really passionate soccer player, and I was a defender, and slide tackle was my specialty, right? So when I started like getting into skating, I have always to this day, and I struggle, and I will get it someday, like the torque. But I'm not good at cess slides, like Royale cess slide. But I realized that if I dropped my leg, and I think it was just we were all playing with it. Honestly, it might have been Matt Jorgensen who I saw do it first. We're just fucking around. But I was like, that feels good. So I started doing the body slide with like kind of my body down, like a slip out Royale, but my hands are up.
Hmm.
And then playing with that, and then I think just it was just natural to think like, can I do it on a rail? And that's what happened. And it's I will say this: it's pretty cool that Eugen Innen, I hope I'm saying his name
Yeah, Eugen
right.
Eden. Yeah.
Okay, and he reached out to me when he dropped like a recent shadow edit and said, "Yo, thanks, man." And he did a bunch of them.
I
I
was
was
gonna make
like,
that correlation too. I didn't know if it was the
"What?"
exact same maneuver that you did, but I remember him doing something very similar to that as well.
Yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, he Eugened it, so he
Yeah.
made it more tech. But he was doing different ones, and I've seen some people do them. And to be honest, I thought that I had made a mistake doing that. I thought that it was like I'm not gonna do those anymore because that's not cool, Or I want to be like when I was like Shadow Days, I wanted to show that I could like skate for real, like traditional, like that was too far. I
Hmm.
Yeah.
agree, everyone. Sorry, didn't mean to. But
Yeah.
then what's funny is that like right before the knee surgery last year, I started doing them again, and shit, it feels so good for me.
Do you wear shin guards
Yeah.
when you do that?
No,
No.
no, I kind
It's
of
just
put it down.
all in like the buckle cuff area.
Robbie Pitts does a variation of it a little
That's
bit. Like
true.
I
Yeah.
see it popping up here and there. And then when the the trick that you showed, Rob,
Hmm.
the it's like kind of a variation of that too, like kind of spinning on his button, like yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I had to have other. It's sad, like if you are out there and your body feels good doing something, go with it. And luckily, we're in a place in skating where that's okay, you know.
Hmm.
So I
Definitely.
will be continuing to do body slides. I got ideas.
Yes, let's see more of them.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
All right, let's take a couple more of these questions from the live chat. Before we get into the questions, Sean Michelson left a super chat. He said, one, thanks for telling your story, brother. And two, this is dumb, but I went up to your apparent doppelganger at Bitter Cold Showdown because I wanted to apologize for not giving you photo credit on my GeoCities website back in the day. I was 16 and dumb. So
Well, I don't even know what he's talking about, but I hope that I wasn't mean about that. It's okay. And yeah, my doppelganger. Interesting. Does my doppelganger skate too? I don't know. He was there.
he must. If he was at Bitter Cold, he must.
Yeah.
Was his name Kevin Yee?
All right, let's take a couple of these questions. Shawn Michelson again says, how often does Kenji skate, and is there anything on the horizon we can look forward to?
Well, so like I've been telling y'all, I just had a third left knee surgery about 4 months ago, and you know, I am in PT recovery mode probably until I'm good. You know, my doctors think maybe I could put skates on at the end of this year, maybe next year. Um, and like, you know, and I'm working hard to get back. But so right now I don't skate, you know, I can't. And you know, I'd like, how much do I want to skate when I recover? You know, I like Ben Magaziner and Skateability, and he said something about how we might be skating too much. Like we might need to do more training, you know, than
Interesting.
just trying to skate every day at the same time. Like I'm like everybody else in the world right now watching Sean and Colin Kelso annihilate shit, and I'm so fucking stoked. every time, every time they comment, and you don't. The last one that dropped with the pink skate, oh, I know what's coming. It's going to be all the wheel slides on the ground and shit. No, didn't see a lot of that. That was an interesting take on creative street skating, you know. So basically, those guys I hear they skate every day. I don't know if that works for me or not, but I want to skate the right amount for me, you know. And is there anything coming? If I have any say in it, you know, you'll see sections in my 40s. I'd like to keep it going for 10 more years.
Hell yeah.
That's my, but one day at a time, right?
Sick.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I want to come skate with you, Austin, because the shit you've been doing lately, I'm fucking psyched on. It's
Dude,
cool, man.
I'm gonna skate with thank you, I appreciate that. I'm gonna skate with Michael Torres later tonight, I believe, too, and get some more inspiration from him because he inspires me too and helps me out with all that stuff as well.
I connected with Torres. I don't think I met him, but when I was at Blake Cup, I had to go up to him and say, hey, you know, like, and it was really cool. And after that Blade Cup, like, I was like, I'm going to New York. I want to skate with you. I'm going to SF. I want to skate with you, Danny and Vasugi. I'm going, like, fuck, I want to go to Barcelona. I never got to, you know? And I wanted this year to be 100% about me skating and traveling and reconnecting with people, but the surgery, you know, I didn't even fall straight up. I was at the skate park with Jeff, and I was skating good, and I kept going. I turned around on a bank ramp, and I felt something go wrong, and then they ended up giving me an MRI, and they're like, yeah, we think you have a torn meniscus and your ACL is loose. And then they said, do you want to do the full surgery for both of them, or just want us to touch up the meniscus? I said, just do it all, because the last knee surgery, I said, just do the meniscus. I don't want the full ACL. So they opened me up, and the craziest thing is this, like, the MRI showed that I still had kind of an ACL, but this whole time, like when I started skating last year and falling in love with it, I didn't have an ACL. It was just shredded, you know, and my meniscus was torn. So I like was trying to skate with no fucking knee, and you know, like Ben and Magaziner was like, you know, some athletes can build their quad strength up to not need that kind of surgery and keep going, but not everybody can. It's hard to tell who can and who can't. And like, so now I got a brand new. I'm on my third or fourth left knee.
Jeez.
I have early arthritis in my meniscus. My doctor said that I still do have the cushion. I'm not bone on bone. And I said, dude, like, if I quit skating now, is it a better chance of me not needing a knee replacement soon? Because that's what happens down the road. Or if I skate with less impact, or if I blah, 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 what are all the options? He said, the only thing that I know based on research that I can tell you definitively is that it's based on your genetics. So when I heard that, I said, okay, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah, makes
You know
sense.
what I mean? So I'm hoping I hope that I wanted to come out with a section, it's cute, like I'm 40, and and I don't know if I'm gonna get it like right at 40, because like we're saying, Austin, we don't want to we want to practice.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like, oh, I can skate again. If that happens, if you're talking to you, Bill, you're gonna remind me, hey, you said you would be careful, and I want to be careful. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do feel like my mind's still on fire for skating. It never really stopped. Just like Nick Regal was saying, you never stop thinking about a trick when you see a spot. And
Yeah.
and I and I'm obsessed. Like I'm a fucking nerd in there in my brain. It's like it's I have a highly developed skating imagination. I used to call it like mind skating. I just like close my eyes, put my head on my table in high school, and ignore the teachers, and skate in my mind. And if I can't, yeah, I want it all. I want to. I think the reason why, again, I want to keep skating. One thing, let me just say one thing. Like, so I met Nay and Michael Kraft at the Blade Cup. I love their skating, and I kind of see, when I look at them, I kind of think they're kind of like how I was, right? They're like the outside the box now, and I could sense like maybe that I influenced them somewhat. But what's cool is that if I keep skating, then then I can take influence from them, and then this circle, like I do want that, but I'll never leave skating. I'm not going away. If I can't if I can't do it on like a high level, then I'll find other ways to contribute,
Totally.
So yeah,
Cool.
but I'm still hungry. Crazy
Gotta
as
be.
hell. Yeah.
All right, we'll take one or two more of these questions before we get into our Patreon, going through the old sections.
Yeah.
But this one's a very straightforward one. Um, let's see. It's from Judas Link. Who's your current favorite skater?
Danny Mall.
Sick. Very
Nice, straight to the
straightforward.
point.
Number one. I stand behind Danny.
That last section you put out was so good.
Yeah.
Like a few months
I
ago,
was
whatever.
I was watching it in my apartment alone, screaming. And and Danny's it for me, because like I love Danny, and like we've been through a lot together. We were the ones skating with Sean, you know,
Mm.
and I see what Danny's been through, and I see how hard the struggle has been to get to where he's at, and I actually think that he deserves whatever skating can give him the most. Please, someone put him on pro. Give him that, if it's possible. Honestly, like if somebody came to me and said, hey, I want to put you on pro, I want you to be on a boot company, and I know it's crazy, and I don't know how I feel about like the youth and their opportunities, but I still want it. But if they said it's you or Danny, I'd say go with Danny.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Shout out Danny Mom. This is, I guess we'll take this one as the last one. This is kind of a question. I'm not sure how to answer, but I'll ask it anyway. And he does a bonus part of the question, but we can ignore that.
Ooh, a bonus.
So, Tony Rivatuzo says, I'd like to know what elemental bender Kenji would classify his skating as now and why.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We know. So, okay, I think that I'm a natural earthbender. I think that and you see that in like my high school days, I had a solid style, solid. Not too fluid like a Kai Carlson Wee, and not too fiery like maybe a Farmer. But so my element is earth. Although, who like Pat Lennon is obviously air. I think Billy, you got some fire, but and some fluidity. I love this stuff, and
Yeah, it's fun.
shout out to anime, basically. But yeah, I do think I have a little bit of fire and a little bit of water that I'm developing, but I'm grounded in the earth. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
take on
Very
skating I've
cool.
never heard of before. I love that.
Yeah,
I
I
love
mean, I
that.
yeah, I remember trying like a really hard trick, trying to do a photo shoot for my BMAG thing with Shooty, and it was a topsole on a rail to a left foot sole, a pretty big rail to a left foot sole on a ledge that was like out. It was in LA, and it was like one of those ones where you're like, I've tried it a million times, you know? And I remember I tried to channel every single element to make it happen, you know? And I've always kind of had that connection spiritually, like I for a long time I've kind of felt chi in my body, you know, energy. And I used to like and I still do, like I use my fingertips and I feel energy building until like kind of the meter gets there, and then you yeah. So
Oof.
yeah,
Nice. Very
we all
cool. I
do it.
love that. I
We
love
all
that.
do
No,
it.
definitely. And I love the elements. It reminds me of like the old skating video Elements and Elements
Elements.
1. Earth, what each skater had an element, earth, water. Dustin Latimer was famously air,
Yeah.
I think, wasn't he? Yeah. And
He was
but very
those
cool. Very
he might have been. I think he was all of it. You know,
yeah,
he
I think
was
he
like
was
In
all he's like
reality, yeah.
Captain Planet. He
the
was like Captain
Avatar.
Planet. He brought it all
Yeah,
together.
Well, that was
they
before
kind
he
of
was
said
the DL that he
for fucking
became.
yeah. In Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Avatar is the one person who has all the elements, and that's probably
Very cool.
Latimer.
As Latimer.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
Definitely
yeah.
Latimer.
Thanos.
Um,
Um
yeah, no, this has been great. Kenji, this has been awesome. This episode, I
I
love
know.
this episode, everything about it. We're
Thank you
gonna,
so.
yeah, we're gonna do the Patreon
Thanks for
video
sharing.
after this. Is there any last minute shout outs or anything else you wanted to say before we ended this podcast, though?
Yes, I did prepare my thank yous because I didn't want to mess that up, and it's a hard thing. Okay, 1 second. I'm just gonna read it because it's like so many people have helped me, and I have so many people to say thank you to. I'm not gonna say too many specific names because then I know I'm gonna miss somebody. Thank you to the Minnesota crew. Thank you to SD homies, especially Santee crew for accepting us weirdo Minnesotans. Thank you to the Shock Posse. Thank you to the Apples crew. Thank you to my family. Thank you to the Shui team. Thank you to my queer community in Minneapolis. Thank you to Jump Street. Thank you to my therapists over the years. Thank you to Matt Rice for sponsoring me for the last 10 years. When he asked me to ride for Deal With It, I told him I'll only do it if you accept that I may never skate again. I may never do anything. And if you want me to ride for it, then I will. And here's the thing, like, it's not like sponsorship's like a big deal anymore because there's just nothing going on in the way. There's not a lot going on. I feel it's hard. But like one thing I've learned is that like if you go with the people that you feel that they care and they love of you. And if it wasn't for Matt, again, I wouldn't have made this little comeback. He gave me the pro wheel, and I never thought I'd get that. And I remember when of course, I want to make a section, and we discussed different options. Maybe we can do like a compilation of my previous work, and it can be like a commemoration of like what I've done. But I like went to the skate park, and I was out of shape, and I tried to like think like, can I still do this? I scared it like bad, but but then of course it's in us, and it started to come back. And Falcon is a local guy who filmed my promo section, and my knee was so fucked up that like I could only skate for about an hour before I had to take my skates off and limp home. But thank you, Matt. I mean, I would never leave Deal With It. I don't care if you people out there don't think we're cool. I don't give a fuck. I will never leave this company because Matt is one of my dearest friends, and that's it. Um, and then lastly, I said all that, and thank you to the rollerblading community. Thank to everyone that we all put our lives into this, and we built something, and let's keep it going. Like I want to be old and go to the skate park, and whether or not I can put them on, I want us to still be here. So please, please and thank you. And to anyone who fucking dug my skating over the years, thank you.
Hell yeah. We feel the love over here. Um,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love everything you said right there. This episode has been awesome. Everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for the next Jump Street episode. We're gonna also, if you're our Patreon member, stay tuned. We're gonna watch some sections with Kenji right after this. So Kenji, you stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We're gonna end this, and then we're gonna continue on with the Patreon. But everyone else, we'll see you all in the next episode. Peace.